This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about a boogie woogie, and I'm going to play one.
I'm Steve Vincent.
I'm Paul Schultz.
And this is the Don't Panic Radio Show. Sit back, relax, and ignore the news. Nothing you're about to hear is true.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
This is episode 198. I'm Steve Vincent. Sitting right over there is Paul Schultz.
Hey, how you doing?
This week we're going to talk about the Wild Bunch. This being the, 50th anniversary?
Yeah.
50th anniversary. It's so appropriate because this season of the Don't Panic Radio Show, meaning the last 10 episodes or so, have been very much about turning 50.
Yeah.
You turned 50 last year. I turned 50 this year. The Wild Bunch turned 50 just last week. So I watched it.
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
Oh, yeah. We watched it simultaneously, but apart.
I could feel us watching it together. Distance, hey, mere geographical distance in this physical plane cannot separate us. One of my favorite quotes, and I sent you this while we were watching it, was, "Being right's my business."
That's right.
I was like, that's my business.
And we saw where that got him.
Yeah, right. What business are you in? Being right.
And business is good.
Yeah, and business is good. It's like, I'm in the being right business. I'm not that great at it. I'm sort of mediocre. That's one of those businesses where if you're mediocre at being right, I don't think you could really say being right's your business.
Yeah.
Whereas, let's say you're a mediocre cobbler, right? And you're like, his shoes are okay. He prices them pretty low, so, if you need a cheap pair of shoes, probably won't last more than a year, but he does all right. He's a mediocre cobbler. You could probably make an okay living, right? But if you're in the being right business, you're like, going down to Steve. His prices are good. He's kind of mediocre at being right. So if you really need somebody to be right, like every time, don't go to him. But a lot of the times he's right. Not really most of the time. Like, you would never go to that guy. You'd be like, no, why would I go to that guy? I'm right at least, half of the time. Why do I need to go to a guy whose business it is being right if he's not really good at it?
But one of the benefits of, turning 50 is you're officially your dad's age, and your dad was always right.
That's a good point. So we're gonna talk about the Wild Bunch today. I took notes, which is the best way to watch the Wild Bunch. Actually, I only took notes during the last 34 minutes, which I had to watch today because I couldn't finish it last night. That's going to be one of my notes, is that movie is too damn long. I know some of my notes are going to be unpopular with many of the hosts of this show. But, I got to be honest, right? I got to be me. I got to be real. Even if it's unpopular with some of the hosts of the show, it's still got to be real. This is one of your favorite movies of all time, am I right?
It is the favorite movie of mine of all time, yes. Not just one of.
I know our listeners follow you on Facebook, so they probably already know this, but can you remind us why it's your favorite movie of all time?
Why don't you read it?
Oh, good idea. Playing the part of Paul Schultz.
If they move, kill them.
"50 years ago today, those words exploded across the screen as the Wild Bunch debuted across a country that wasn't ready for it. Admittedly, I saw it much later, around 1986, and it wasn't until even later that the director's cut was released. But this movie spoke to me on a visceral level. It's my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it more times than I can count, and I'll take the Pepsi challenge with it against anything you can throw at me. If you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to watch it. That said, I know what I'm doing tonight. Laundry. So then your friend Primo, great name, by the way, Italian dude,
Yeah.
Cardinale.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Italians love Westerns.
Spaghetti westerns in particular, but
So Primo says, it's arguably, I'm trying to do it in an Italian accent, but I'm not going to do that. It's arguably a fine film, and specifically an amazing Western. What is it about TWB, that's the Wild Bunch for those of us who are on the inner circle, in your opinion, that elevates it above, say, The Searchers, Once Upon a Time in the West, or Josie Wales? And then Paul Schultz responds with one of the best reviews of a Western I've ever heard. It's an unflinching look at how man is just a two-legged animal. How the innocent suffer the most. We're never who we really think we are. Loyalty is what matters above all else, and there's only one way out of this world. It's a big, bloody mirror held in front of us. Some of us look at it. Some of us have to look away. It's about what happens when we refuse to adapt to changing times. The performances are great as well. There's a story I read once. During a rehearsal after Edmund OBrien delivered his "Who the hell is they?" speech, in character, Holden got up and headed for his trailer. When Peckinpah asked him where he was going, Holden replied, "To rehearse." So I watched it last night, primarily because of your post and your unflinching comments about the movie. And I was like, all right, I got to figure out who Edmund OBrien. Which one is Edmund OBrien? Oh, yeah, he's the Blazing Saddles character that says, the sheriff is near. He's the prospector in the Ballad of, what's his name?
The Ballad of Buster Scruggs and Other Stories or something like that.
Yeah, he's the prospector in that one. He's the old drunk in the town in Blazing Saddles. Except it's an I could watch that movie again and again and like just study that one character because he gets real serious sometimes, you know. Like a lot of the time he's just like this. Yeah, and then sometimes he'll go, "Who's they?" I'll tell you who they is.
They's just plain and fancy they. That's who they is.
Fantastic way to put it. And then I was like, when he first said, "Why did you like this movie?" I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. 'Cause I half expected it to just be like, it's just great. It's a great Western. I just like it. That's all. I just love this Western. Not because I don't have faith in your ability to describe why you like stuff.
Right.
But because I know that sometimes you feel like people don't want to hear it. And
Yes.
I'm so glad that you realized that Primo really wanted to hear it, and so did the rest of us, because that, my friend, is fantastic.
Well, thank you. It comes from watching it more times than I can remember.
All right. So here's the first thing I'm going to say about it. It was too long. I don't know if this was the director's cut or the extended edition or whatever, but what was it, like 2.5 hours? Or
Yeah,
something?
2 hours and 24 minutes.
I think it could have been an hour and 45 minutes.
It initially was after the first release. It got chopped down to about that.
Wonder what they chopped.
They cut out all the flashbacks with Holden and his girlfriend, and when him and Robert Ryan were in the hotel room.
Oh,
And they cut out the whole big scene where the general is fighting Pancho Villa at the train station. Yeah, they cut out all that stuff.
those would not have been my choices to cut.
Yeah, that's what they cut.
In fact, I'm not sure there were any whole scenes that would have cut. I think there were lots of like, okay, this scene could have been shorter. I would have gotten the gist of what they're trying to do. Maybe there was a lot. One of the scenes I thought really dragged out was from the moment, and it was multiple scenes, but the train where they were robbing the train. I felt like they dragged that out quite a bit. And by they, who's they? Just
Who the hell
don't
is
play no fancy they? Right. So anyway, I guess I'll just start by saying the first half hour was probably the best half hour in cinema.
Yes.
Right? I mean, the movie, I'm sure Peckinpah was thinking, I'm just going to grab him by the nuts in the first half an hour.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to squeeze, and I'm just going to keep squeezing for the rest of the movie.
Pretty much, yes.
I mean, I had forgotten most of the movie. I'll just freely admit. I know I've seen it before, but I have forgotten most of it. I get it confused. There's another movie where like four guys go up against this big group of like a marauding army of, I forget what that movie's called. Anyway, I get it confused. So I didn't remember. I was like, I think these soldier dudes are actually going to rob the place, but I don't quite remember, But then when the shootout, like before the shootout happened, I was like, oh, there's no way they're going to shoot up this whole town. And I just love the way that they, like, Peckinpah's just like, I don't give a fuck. Whatever. Let's shoot up this whole town.
Yep.
Innocent people dying, kids getting shot. And then how the dudes, like the posse, we represent the law, those guys. They come running out and just start like, oh, we're just going to scavenge all these people we just killed, including the innocent townies.
Yep, they're buzzards.
And in the end scene, right, they're buzzards literally in the end after another big shootout and a bunch of dead people that these guys, and in the end, these guys didn't kill any of the people that were dead. They just start scavenging, and they're literally are buzzards.
Yeah. Because they've even got buzzards up on like the ramparts and stuff, kind of like symbolizing as these guys are all running through there, picking through people's stuff.
And they even said at one point, like, don't hang around because the buzzards are going to pick them apart. Like, yep, these guys are buzzards. That's for sure. So yeah, the first half an hour and the last half an hour of this movie. If you don't watch anything else, you'll be confused at the end, but you will see some great action. It's kind of like if you're going to watch Olympus Has Fallen, as we did. You pretty much know which scenes you want to watch, right? If you only have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
You don't need all that talking in the middle. You get the gist. So back to kind of what you were saying about it. It holds a mirror to us and man's just an animal on two legs or whatever. That's pretty much most of human history, And
that's one of the things he was trying to do with that movie.
I think we live in a time now where we believe, at least in the United States and most of Europe, probably large sections of Russia and China, we kind of believe we're done with all that. Life isn't like that anymore. And it's real clear who the good guys are, and it's real clear who the bad guys are. And, there's justice, and just most of human history has not been that way. And in fact, large portions of the earth currently are not that way.
Right.
And so I wonder, are we making progress? Are we getting better? You know what I mean?
As I explained to my therapist one day, that this current generation, the generation that you and I are raising, is the first generation on this planet that gets to be quote unquote normal. They don't have all of this attached to them, all this stuff looming over their heads the way we did and the way generations before us did. So I think we are.
I wonder if, and maybe it's some of the darkness coming out. Is it a paper thin veneer? In other words, what would it take to send us back? Like nothing, we haven't evolved. Like there's no evolution, like biological evolution that's happened.
Right.
So in other words, if, I don't know, let's say somebody actually does activate Cerberus, like at the end of Olympus Has Fallen, and somebody explodes a bunch of nuclear or whatever, or some Mad Max situation happened. Is there anything about human beings today that would keep us from reverting back to the Wild Bunch? Or is it our societal institutions that we've built up in what we call civilized society, the West, the East, China, say China to some extent, because they're still a little bit brutal, but in general, they have pretty civilized society. Western society is pretty civilized. But, I mean, look at Eastern Europe when the Soviet Union fell. I mean, they just immediately devolved into sectarian violence. But the counter argument to that would be, yeah, but look, it only took a year or two to sort that out.
That's exactly what would happen again. I think we like civilization too much to revert to barbarism again, if that's the word I'm looking for. It might happen for a year, depending on the scale of the disaster. But I think we just like, we like our lattes too much. We like Law and Order a little bit too much.
Yeah, you know what? I think that it's probably another episode, but I just feel like there's something in human nature that you might be right if we could get it sorted out within a decade. But if it went longer than a generation, I think humans would revert to what we evolved to be, which is, strong men, loyalty. Here's the other thing about loyalty that they pointed out in the movie. Like the statement, like a really bold statement was, if you give your word, right, you are your word, right? You have to keep your word. And Ernest Borgnine's like, it's not just your word. It matters who you give it to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So it's not just loyalty. It's who you're loyal to.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we got to the point where somebody said, well, who am I going to be loyal to? Well, it's whoever's not going to, kill me immediately. Whoever I tend to sort of like, and whoever can help me, who can protect me, right? Which ends up being either a corrupt Mexican general or William Holden or the other guy. I always forget their names. Either Pike. You're going to follow Pike. You're going to follow Thornton. And even Thornton, ends up following, not because he wants to, but because he feels like he has to. It's like, I either do what the railroad's telling me or I go back to prison.
Yeah.
Right? So even he, who's like, I can't tell if he's supposed to be the good guy or the bad guy. That's part of the ambiguity of the movie. It's like nobody's a good guy, nobody's a bad guy.
Well, as he put it, what I want and what I need are two different things.
Yes.
He wanted to be with Holden and the rest of them, but what it needed to be is not in prison.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The thing about that movie, too, is the characters constantly contradict themselves because they say one thing and then do another. And that's why, in the end, they realize that they've pretty much fucked everything. That everything that they ever thought was what they thought they were Robin Hood, but they really weren't. And then in the end, when they realized that Angel actually was Robin Hood, that's who they wanted to be like.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think in the end it was just so well put together. Just the way that Ernest Borgnine and Pike had the conversation about, I think this will be my last job, and I'm moving on. Ernest Borgnine's like, moving on to what? What else is there?
And then Pike looks at him like, fuck, I know. All right, I know. Yeah. There is nothing to move on to. It's almost like the Wild Bunch was of Mice and Men. It's like, we got this great dream that we're going to settle on, but we know it's completely unattainable. Well,
and in the end, and in the final analysis, what did they do? Well, they got done fucking the hookers. The two guys underpaid, but he ended up overpaying.
He overpaid because she represented everything he never had.
Well, everything that he could never be. Like, she was good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
If there was a good guy, it was probably her. And he could never be that, and he could never have that. So he's like, well, here's a bunch of gold, right?
Yep.
Probably paid her like $500 or something.
Most like, which was a lot more than it is now.
Well, the other ones wanted like the equivalent of like probably 20 cents, you know? And so then he just looks at the other guys and he's like, let's go. Let's go. So I think it was a suicide mission. I think he knew it. They all knew it. They knew they weren't going to give him Angel back. And they knew that it was going to come down to a gunfight. And they knew it was 4 dudes against 300 soldiers.
But here's the thing. When they get there and the general slits Angel's throat and Pike shoots him.
Yeah.
And the crowd goes crazy, but they're all paused.
Yeah.
They could have backed out. But when Holden looks at Borgnine, who's this anti-Jiminy Cricket, and he's like, we can do this.
Yeah.
And that was like, okay. Off goes the German general. And then everything just landslides.
You know what I thought for a second during that? And this is indicative of me listening to way too much hardcore history. For a split second, probably more like 8 or 9 split seconds, I thought, this is, so, the Mexicans are basically the descendants, it's all mixed, right, of the Spanish who conquered the Aztecs, right? And they've mixed, like the Spanish and the Aztecs and the Mayans and all the local, it's weird how Mexico, like the United States is nothing like Mexico in terms of like it's rare to meet. Everybody claims they have Indian blood, but most people don't, right? But
almost every woman I've ever met claims she has Indian blood.
You mean in
Guys,
a jar
not so much.
on the shelf, or in your? What do you actually mean? It's like, that's weird. You have Indian's blood in the fridge. Where do you have this? Anyway, so but Mexican, like I used to think, why are Mexicans and South America, Central Americans, why are they dark skinned and Spanish people are white? It's like, oh, that's right. They mix. Like there's a lot, because Central American, Mexican Central American civilization was way more advanced at that point. At least I'll put it a different way. First of all, it was more advanced in terms of, empire, like the strength and stability of the empire was way more advanced in the Mexico, Central American, South American regions than it was up in the United States, Canada region. But the second thing is the disease that the Spanish brought with them and the Europeans brought with them pretty much wiped out the natives that were in the United States and what is now the United States and Canada, right? Before Europeans ever started pushing west. So there wasn't a lot of resistance left or a lot of people to breed with. So anyway, that the thing I thought when these, because Cortez showed up with like 600 men and like 100 horses or something, a few cannon, some rifles, and armor, and steel. He showed up with that many people and ended up conquering the Aztec Empire, which was a couple million Aztecs, strongest empire, as strong as the Roman Empire at its height, right? In terms of, what they were dealing with. So then I thought, oh, is that what he's trying to say? Like these 4 dudes are going to freaking conquer this 300 person army, just 4 guys. And are they going to do it the same way that Cortez did it? Which the way Cortez did it, well, he did 2 things. One is he enlisted the help of the local other tribes that didn't like the Aztecs. And actually, Pizarro did an even more dramatic job of this, but took very few people to the capital and captured the leader. And while everybody stood around just kind of in shock, all the Aztecs in the north and the Incas in the south just kind of stood around in shock while these Europeans just kind of captured the leader. And suddenly now they're in charge. And I thought, oh, is that what he's doing? Like now these, it's like the real Montezuma revenge. Are these 4 guys just going to take over this town? Because for a second there, I was thinking, like a few of the soldiers were putting their hands up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, are these guys just going to take over this town? Then, of course, the shooting really started. And then they got a hold of the damn machine gun. And I was like,
And the grenades.
and the grenades. And I was like, this is a World War I preview right here. Right. You even had the German guy who was one of the first ones to get shot, but you had massed infantry charging into machine gun fire and grenades.
Yep.
I was like, that's World War I right there.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so great. What a great scene that was. Just the bodies are just piling up, and these guys are just like one of them would get shot, and the other one would grab the machine gun and keep shooting. Oh, it was great. And then at the very end, Pike's hand is still gripping the grip of the machine gun.
Still on the gun.
When Thornton, comes up and finds him. It's like that, even though he was shot by a little kid, it's still like that is like going out in a blaze of glory right there. That's better than retirement.
That's what we all hope for.
Yes.
The little kid, the funny thing is, the little kid that shoots him is the same little kid that was like standing around the general during the whole battle with Pancho Villa's men that was waiting for him to like let him, relieve him.
Oh, that was the same kid.
And you never would have known that in the original, in the pre-director's cut version, you never would have known that.
I thought that was a great scene, the Pancho Villa scene, because I don't know. I feel like a lot of, I think the reason the Italians like Westerns is obviously, there's cross influences, right? The spaghetti Western genre. But I also think there's a lot of, now that I know more about Roman history, I think there's a lot of that, like Romans is like the macho men of Rome were so cowboy and so Mexican generalissimo. Like that's exactly what a Roman general would have done, right? Like these barbarians are attacking from the hills. A Roman general would just stand there until the last second, just going like men would be falling around him from the arrows or whatever. And they would just stand there until the last second and be like, okay, now let's go,
Right.
You know what else I wonder? When you think about the Western genre, like this was, I don't know, when you talk about Pancho Villa and there's an automobile and a machine gun and grenades, I don't know exactly when it was set. It had to be in the 1900 something, right? 1910 at the latest, maybe?
It was 1913.
13, okay. So yeah, sometime in the first, before World War, just before World War I, right?
Right.
Could even have been after World War I had broken out in Europe. But that is the absolute latest that you can have a Western.
That's why he put it there.
And if you want to go backwards, like the late 1850s, maybe is about the earliest you can go.
Yeah.
You got to be somewhere between Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Wild Bunch to be a Western, right?
Yes.
And so what I was wondering is, okay, that 50-year time period is when the Wild West was the Wild West to Europeans, right? And the Wild West we love the Wild West because the Wild West is kind of like how we sort of believe men are supposed to be, right?
Yes.
The strong survive. There's no clear good or evil. There's just strength. There's loyalty.
Or there's 100% clear-cut good versus evil.
Yeah, the white hats and the black hats, right? I started wondering that area of the country, or of the planet, meaning northern Mexico, southern, what is now the United States. So like Texas, California, Mexico, northern Mexico, those areas. I wonder if it was like that, only not with Europeans, but with, descendants of the Spanish. In other words, maybe the Mexicans and the Central Americans, we know. In fact, I already know this. The Mexicans were dealing with the Apache and the Creek, and those, I don't know about the Creek, but certainly the Apache, they were dealing with them and had a much worse time of it than the Americans for 100 or more years. Right? They started running into Apache, and the Apache were like, we don't see borders. We just like, these are our lands, right? And we live here. And so, there'd be raids. And so I just wonder if there were like Mexican, in other words, what we call cowboys, were there Mexican cowboys, and for how long? So this whole episode has basically been trying to approximate what you already said about this movie. It does so many great things. It reminds me of so much of human history, and it pretty much captures. Like, I think slice of life movies, basically chick flicks, try to capture the human spirit. It's like, this is humanity. This movie's about humanity and who we are as people. And I think most of them. They may be right, but they should say when we're at our best, when there's stability, when there's a functioning government, and running water. It's like, but my belief is if you took all that away, like the veneer of all of the norms and rules and stability and security that we have, if you took all that away, I think the Wild Bunch is an accurate of a portrayal of humanity as any movie I've seen.
Yeah. And it is, and I think that's why initially it didn't do so well in the box office.
People are like, this sucks.
Because, well, think about it. 1969, we were smack fuck dab in the middle of Vietnam, and Peckinpah's mission with the Wild Bunch was he hated the fact that we sat at our supper table with our TV dinners watching footage from Vietnam, all the while all around those news broadcasts were these really cheesy westerns where the good guys always won. There was never any blood, and the guy who died would be in another show, as a different character. Oh, yeah. He really wanted to show how horrible the violence of it was, because his plan was he wanted to show you how ugly it was so that we would stop being obsessed with it. But he later admitted that he fucked up because we became obsessed with that movie. The audience fell for it for the wrong reasons. They got off on the excessive violence. And remember, 1969. That you look at it now and you see that kind of stuff on regular TV, network television. In 1969, they were running up against Disney movies and musicals and stuff like that. And what westerns were left were the ones where the guy shoots and the guy goes, and covers it up and falls over and pretends he's dead. It was super realistic at that point. Now it's a Disney movie practically, but it just didn't. It didn't accomplish what he had set out for it to accomplish, because Peckinpah was a Korean War veteran and he'd seen some pretty hairy shit. So he was trying to bring that into, take his experiences from Korea in the Vietnam era and hopefully make a statement. But the statement got lost.
It's interesting because, you say it's a Disney movie or whatever. The violence isn't, it's graphic enough. Like you see the blood spouting and everything. But women and children die. The number of young, innocent women who die in this thing, it's just, and innocent men and kids,
Mm-hmm. When they were setting up the squibs, because the first scene they shot was the finale. And they went, I forget which movie company made it, but they gave them something like 40,000 rounds of, fake ammo. And he's like, I'm going to need more. And like, no, this is enough. Well, they burned through that initial amount in the finale, which was, like I said, the first scene shot. And one of the things, when they were setting up the squibs and stuff for the blood, he fucking hated it. Because it looks like, it's like what they were doing with the spaghetti westerns. Because one of the things that, like the spaghetti westerns and the Italian movies, even though they could show blood, which is why Clint Eastwood went to Italy to make these movies, it looked like paint. Mm-hmm. So what he did was, it's kind of terrible. He found a cow and he goes, look, bang, and he shot the cow. That's what blood looks like. Wow. So the squibs were essentially cow blood. So what I'm wondering is, they filmed that in, I want to say, somewhere close to Mexico. So in the middle of summer, it's probably like 110 degrees out. They're in this little confined atrium-looking Coliseum area with all this real blood. The smell had to have been horrendous. Which is why you can almost smell this movie.
Yeah. And some of the dialogue, they're like, let's get out of here. This place is going to stink soon.
Yeah, they're going to start getting ripe pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, I give it I don't know, maybe a 10 out of 11.
I'll accept that. One day we'll watch it together, and it'll be 11 out of 11.
Let's just not drink too much beforehand because I don't want to fall asleep. All right, good movie. Watch this movie and then also watch Olympus Has Fallen. But
He's got a new one out. Did you see that?
no,
It's Every Motherfucking Thing Has Fallen.
everybody. All right, in that case, for Deke Thornton, for Pike Bishop, for Ernest Borgnine, who I don't care what his character's name in any movie he's in, he will always be Ernest Borgnine to me because his mama called him Ernest Borgnine, his daddy called him Ernest Borgnine. I'm going to call him Ernest Borgnine. And for Paul Schultz, I'm Steve Vinson, and nothing you just heard was true.
And who the hell is they?
They? Why, they is just plain and fancy they. That's who they is. Caught you, didn't they, eh? Tied a tin can to your tail, led you in and waltzed you out again. Oh, my, what a bunch. Big tough one, eh? Here you are with a handful of holes, a thumb up your ass, and a big grin to pass the time of day with.